Hello and welcome to India Hangout Concepts. The question we are asking today is, what does affirmative action mean for you and how could it potentially affect you? So the idea here is to understand what is affirmative action in the context of India. The reason we are talking about this obviously is a statement made by the Vice President very recently about affirmative action and Muslims. So let's try and understand the background in this conversation rather than debate. I'm joined at this point by Professor Kamal Mitra Chenoy, professor at JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University, and I'm also joined by Hasan Kamal, senior Urdu journalist and vice president of Muslims for Secular Democracy. He's also a lyricist. Thank you both for joining us. Professor Chenoy, let me begin with you. The first question is, since we've been talking about reservation in the recent past, are affirmative action and reservation the same? And if not, why not? And what's the difference? Why don't you go first, Professor Chenoy?
Well, in the first place, affirmative action is a term used in the United States. And whereas the reservations is a fairly serious concept, because it's not just affirmative action, like saying if two people are equal, a male and a female, the female should get advantages. It actually says that a percentage of entitlements, jobs, admissions to educational degrees, etc., will be reserved for what in the constitutional mechanism is called constitutionally, socially, and educationally backward classes, and that has been summarized as OBCs and reservations, but it's actually more than that.
Just to sort of again get a little bit of history into this, so affirmative action as we know it in other parts of the world is also new. In the US, it was signed in 1961. Though affirmative action in the United States and in other countries means something else, in India, as you said, it's more about reserving a specific number. So is it only the number that makes the difference, or is it also as it tends towards more positive or reverse discrimination, as they say?
In the Constituent Assembly, there was quite a bit of debate about how to bring about social and economic equality. Political equality was, according to Ambedkar, settled by the question of one man, one value, one vote. But we have a caste-ridden society, and we have castes that are quite backward, socially and educationally. And the Supreme Court has brought in an economic dimension in sense of the term of creamy layer, that if you have above a certain income, then irrespective of your social and educational backwardness, you will not get reservations. So it operates in only, however, the public sphere, that is in the public sector. It does not operate in the private sector, which is a big handicap. But at the time this Mandal Commission report was resurfaced in 1991, the private sector was dead set against reservation. So it is a partial reservation because a lot of the public sector has been sold off, and the bulk of the industrial sector is the private sector where there is no reservation.
Okay, let me come to Hasan Kamal. So Hasan, I mean, the first question we are still asking is, are affirmative action and reservation one and the same? What does it mean to you?
Please call me Hasan Kamal.
Yes.
Yeah. Carry on.
So no, the question is, what does affirmative action mean to you, and do you see it on the same level as reservation? This is more of an academic question at this point.
Well, in India, we understand things through reservation only. All other terms are aliens to many in this country. And so far the reservation is concerned, Mandal Commission has very clearly defined that who are the sections of society, which are the sections of society which deserve a reservation. I must tell you that I don't know how many people know it, but the fact of the matter is that the Muslims who refused to go to Pakistan after the partition of this country and who decided to stay in India, a huge majority of them belonged to the Muslims who were artisans,
Right.
who had their business here, who had their markets here, who had their clientele over here. And they were, and I can assure you, that 85% of the Muslim population in this country, Muslim population, is OBC. Uh, they were not known, perhaps they could not assert themselves, but in Maharashtra and some other states, they have organized themselves and they got the reservation. And so far I'm concerned, I am of the firm conviction that there should not be any reservation on the basis of religion.
On the basis of, can you come again? I missed the last word.
I said there should not be any reservation on the basis of religion. There cannot be a religious reservation in this country. It should. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
He can see himself.
Right. Okay. Let me come back to you, Professor Chenoy. So, before we come to the second question, as we've seen reservations evolve, and obviously there's a big debate going on that as well. If we were to, let's say, increase the number, and of course the numbers are also vary in depending on the state, but there is a central formula saying 7.5% for scheduled castes, 15% for scheduled tribe, 27% for OBC, and general is 51%. As the number increases, do they in some sense lose their efficacy?
No, I don't think so, but I'd like to make one point about some disparity in reservations. For example, if a Dalit changes his religion to Buddhism or Sikhism, both of which are included in Hindus under Article 25, they retain their Dalit reservation rights. But if a Muslim comes to be into a Dalit family because his family has changed religion earlier, or a Christian, they don't get the rights of a Dalit. And this case has been going on in the Supreme Court for more than 10 years. So these are problems that have to be sorted out. And also, there are variations of the enumeration of OBCs from state to state.
Right. Okay.
And
Let's ask
that
the.
looked at afresh.
Right. So since we've touched upon it, let's ask the next question. So affirmative action and Muslims, and why is this an issue that's come up? I mean, obviously because the Vice President Habib Ansari mentioned it, but beyond that, I mean, has anything fundamentally changed in recent times that we need to be revisiting this? Hasan, Kamal, can I come to you first on this?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So the question is really, I mean, why are we talking about affirmative action and Muslims? I mean, or rather, the Vice President who talked about it. Is there something that has fundamentally changed that has put the spotlight on this matter again?
Well, the fact of the matter is that even the Sector Committee in its report has said that the conditions of Muslims in this country is worse than even scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. And that's a fact. The representation of Muslims in different fields of life in India, like in say government jobs, police, military, elsewhere, is very, very low. So I think so far our Vice President is concerned, he himself is a Ansari. And Ansari comes in, they come in OBC. So I don't think that he must be meaning a quota for all the Muslims. But the fact is that Muslims have been deprived. and there should be some attention paid to them so that they could come up in the mainstream.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, Professor Chenoy, let me put the question differently, right? So, why is it that then, affirmative actions or moves in this country have not included Muslims? This is really more of a layman's question. It's not a debating point.
Well, listen, there is a serious problem that the compromise on the Mandal Commission was that the same caste should be in the state list and the union list. And that did negatively impact on the Muslims. The second thing, which I think is very important, is if you exclude reservations from the private sector, which is the main employer, you are weakening the socio-economic thrust of reservations. Because as you could see in Gujarat, the reaction of the Patidars, of the Patels, is towards unemployment. And that is why they want OBC status.
Right.
Earlier, they wanted to be considered higher caste. So I think something should be done about that.
Right.
Why shouldn't the private sector also contribute to socio-economic equality in this country?
Right. So you're linking it to jobs in some ways, and I'm going to come to that. But the Gujarat agitation is also about the agitators saying that either give us reservation or ban reservations completely. How does that sort of hold up in the context of affirmative action and Muslims, particularly since we've heard the Vice President speak on it?
That's just rhetoric. A bunch of Patel youth from Gujarat cannot stop reservation. And the same group who have facilitated Hardik Patel would oppose him if he tried to stop reservations. Reservations now are unstoppable. The question is to make it encompass more of the socio-economic factors which would help reservations have a greater impact on our society.
Right. Okay, so let's pose the next question, which is really economic growth and affirmative action. And let me come back to you, Hasan, Kamal. Does economic growth change the equation, so to speak, and should or would economic growth change that equation? As we become more prosperous, should our need, whether it's Muslims or other parts or other sections of society, would their need for affirmative action reduce or diminish?
I couldn't get you.
So the question is, as there is more economic growth, would the need for affirmative action, whether it's for Muslims or other sections of society, diminish, or should it diminish?
With the growth of economy, I don't think it will diminish. It may increase rather. People will want more and more for themselves. And this is very clear with the movement of Hardik Patel. Patels were always supposed to be a very prosperous community. But today we find that the Gujarat development model could not do anything for the Patels. And that's why young and unexperienced boy within 3 months' time could organize such a huge rally in Ahmedabad, which nobody except Prime Minister Narendra Modi could have done in the past. So I think with the growth of the economy, the desire of sharing the prosperity of the nation would increase, and so would the demand for what we call affirmative action or reservation or whatever it is.
Right.
And it's very sure that the demand will go to the private sector also, which happened in America also.
Right. So, Professor Chenoy, can I come to you? So, again, in the context of economic growth and affirmative action, so as we've grown as an economy, which we surely have in the last decade and a half, we're still at 7.4% GDP growth. Should we be looking at or talking about a roadmap to reduce affirmative action or the sort of spread of affirmative action rather than actually talk about an increase in it?
I think false figures keep coming in the newspapers. And what people like Professor Amartya Sen and others say that poverty is 68.57%. 68.7% means more than two-thirds of the population are below the poverty line. Growth is a bad term. Nowadays, economists use the term that is growth plus
quite a bit of growth. But if there's little equity, it does not go to the poorer sections. It does not go to the OBCs and the SCs, STs. So this growth story is a fraudulent story. And Amartya Sen and Jean Drèze and others have pointed this out repeatedly. And in the case of Europe, Thomas Piketty in his book Capital has said that it's an extremely stratified society. So growth benefits a tiny minority, well under 5%, who own about 70 to 80% of wealth.
I get that point. I mean, obviously there is a concentration of wealth, but in absolute terms too, I mean, I'm sure it is no one's case that poverty has not come down in India. I mean, between the last census and the 2001 and the 2011 census, you get poverty figure coming down from 400 million to less than 270 million or thereabouts. I mean, of course, whether it's achieved its, it's achieved its ultimate objective, I guess not. But we surely have something to show, and therefore a sort of movement in the right direction, isn't it?
No, but Amartya Sen is a Nobel laureate in economics. He and Jean Drèze have calculated this poverty figure of 68.7% based on international comparison. We know that the census is wrong. Economists like me have been saying this for 40 years. The census is infiltrated by political considerations. I mean, go to Gujarat? Why is there this trouble? What is the level of poverty? What is the level of poverty in India? What is the level of poverty in Northeast India? So where is this wealth? The wealth is concentrated.
So let's, without wanting to get into a debate on that, let's ask the last question. I mean, it's really, is there a sort of Indian model that can combine the best of affirmative action and thus a sense of equality? So let me begin with you, Hasan, Kamal. So, as we evolve, I mean, assuming there is some economic growth, if you create reservations or affirmative action movements beyond a point, then you're obviously creating the majority of the population benefits, and there's a minority which is left without any benefits. So in an ideal situation, it should obviously be the reverse. I mean, the people who get special benefits should be a minority, and the majority should really be, perhaps, sort of being or placed on an equal level playing field. So what's your sense? I mean, how do you think this could be in future, or how should we try and work towards a more equitable India?
The growth of economy is, of course, the answer of many problems, but it should be inclusive. Everything should involve everybody, every Indian. And as you said, that with the growth of economy, a majority of the people would be benefited, and perhaps a minority would be at disadvantage. But that minority should not be a Muslim minority, or a Dalit minority, or a minority which has suffered in the last 60 years. But what is happening is that, in the name of, say, if you judge everything with this, that there are everybody in India now in the metropolitan cities and villages also is having a mobile, that is not a sign of prosperity. That is just not, and I don't need the government figure for that also. But if the economy grows and the jobs are created, the minority that is at a disadvantage should not be a Muslim minority, or a Dalit minority, or an OBC minority.
Right. Professor Chenoy, last word. What's the balance in the Indian context that we could be striving for? I mean, I'm assuming that none of us want to land up in a situation where the number of reservations or affirmative actions actually outnumber or outstrip the people who are not eligible for it. So, how could things
That
go?
can't happen.
Yeah.
No. The Supreme Court is very clear. Maximum reservation
50.
cannot exceed 50%.
Yeah.
And any caste which is OBC must be in the state list as well as the central list.
Yes.
So that can't be done. That is why the Jats were removed from Haryana's OBC.
Right.
Well, the real question is, how do you create employment? Because reservation only works if there is employment, and there is reservation in employment. Now the problem is the private sector does not have reservation, but it is very much the leading developmental factor in the industrial economy. So there should be a reconsideration whether there should be some reservation, maybe not as high as in other sectors, but whether there should be some reservation in the private sector, which gets a lot of public sector credit and even public sector funding.
Thank you, Professor Chenoy and Hasan Kamal, for joining us. I think we were trying to get a sense on what affirmative action really means and the way it splits up into what it could mean for Muslims, what it could mean for the country as a whole, and more importantly, how could it potentially balance out in future, considering that we want the prospect of a greater level playing field than the prospect of not having one, or one which is weighed against some communities and clearly not serving the original purpose it was supposed to serve. We've run out of time. That's it from me on India Hangout Concepts. We'll be back very soon. Thanks for watching.